Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's album review. Today, we're going to be reviewing an album by Sabaton. The album is called The Great War, and it is the History Edition. So a bit of an interesting background as to how this was, why we're doing this, basically. It was requested. I will share the screen for you now to show you. So it was requested by a Mr. Jeff Budd, who left a nice long comment about our previous, well, one of our previous videos that we did.
Great comment, Jeff.
Which is one of our metal albums. I'm trying to think which one it was. It was a, can't remember the name of it, which is a bit silly, but okay. And it was Insomnium. There you go. It was the Insomnium album that we listened to.
Oh, okay.
And a little bit critical of us, but he did leave a request for us, which was here. So Sabaton, The Great War. Have fun with that one. So I don't know whether he suggested it, he thinks we're going to absolutely hate it, or whether he thinks we might actually enjoy it. So what we'll do now, we will have a little look at the Wikipedia page. It's quite interesting. I have had a quick look. Quite intrigued by it. So, you see this, Brett?
I can now, yep.
Great
Okay,
War
yeah.
is the 9th studio album by Swedish heavy metal band Sabaton. It's released in 2019. And it's a concept album as well, like the previous album we listened to last week. But what's interesting about it, this time it's about World War One.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So I don't think we've ever listened to well, I certainly haven't in my life, a kind of album related to war, like a whole concept album related to war. So I find that quite interesting, to be honest. So the album was released in 4 separate editions: standard release, a history edition with contextual narration preceding each track, which is what we're going to be listening to. That's the one he's asked us to do. So we're going to get some contextual narration. Sorry. It's a soundtrack edition featuring instrumental orchestral versions of the song, which also sounds interesting. And then a history Patreon exclusive release containing narration by Indy Nadel. This is actually really interesting, isn't it? Like, we're listening to heavy metal, but there's all different versions of it, with narrations and editions with instrumental orchestral versions. I'm actually kind of getting, I don't want to say I'm getting into heavy metal. I'm not, you know, it doesn't mean I like it too much, but I am finding it quite fascinating that there's kind of so much variety involved, and it's a lot more than what I used to think it was, where it was just kind of head bashing and, you know, mosh pits. There's a lot of meaning behind it. So as for the album itself, 1 second, I'll just show you that as well. One sec, I do have it here somewhere. What am I doing? Here it is. So I've prepared it on Spotify. So it's only 42 minutes long. So if it is really, really heavy, then it's not going to be too bad for us, as it's fairly short. And yeah, it's got 11 songs on there. You can see all the song titles are kind of related to the First World War and war in general. So yeah, I'm kind of intrigued by this, to be honest. I think I've got beyond the stage now when it comes to heavy metal, where I'm kind of like, oh no, it's heavy metal, I don't want to listen to this, it's going to be really hard stuff. I'm actually genuinely quite excited for it in a way. Brett, what about you?
Yeah, listen, talking about, you know, concept albums and, you know, them having meaning and telling a story and whatnot. So this is going to be quite interesting. I do love a bit of history. And this is sort of modern history as well. So yeah, it'd be good to sort of listen to it and think about the history side of things as well. Like you, I'm not going to all of a sudden become a heavy metal fan from this. There's obviously going to be elements to that, but this whole sort of narration bit, I think I'm going to find really intriguing. I'm looking forward to that side of things. Again, it's nothing I've ever come across an album before, so I'll be honest, I'm most looking forward to that. But as I said, not going to be a massively long album, so yeah, let's have a bit of a history lesson in this.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make a big effort as well to understand the lyrics. Like, I think I'm going to have the lyrics up on my screen as well, so that I can follow it. Because I think that's going to be really important. You need to.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think we should treat it like almost, it's very way it could almost be like being listened to in a foreign language. Yeah, where it's like being listened to in a foreign language. So actually having the lyrics, and we talked about before the previous one where having the lyrics, like I said, a lot of sort of heavy stuff sometimes can be quite poetic, or have a lot of sort of demeaning. And it's not always just about death and hell. It's sometimes it also is talking about that, but looking at a bigger picture. So yeah, be interesting to get the idea of that.
And just one more thing that I forgot to look at that I'll quickly do now. So it's quite a long introduction. I want to look at the genre of metal. As we know, there are different subgenres. So it's classed as heavy metal and power metal. So I guess not so symphonic, which, to be honest, was kind of what we liked the most about those previous two albums. So I'm a little bit worried by that. Now, power metal is a subgenre of heavy metal combining characteristics of traditional heavy metal with speed metal, often within symphonic context. So it's a faster, lighter, and more uplifting sound, in contrast with the heaviness and dissonance prevalent for it, or whatever. So that's actually doesn't sound too bad. But let's wait and see. Yeah, definitely an intriguing album. We'll be back with you very shortly, having listened to the album. So we will see you soon. So guys, we're back, having now listened to the album. So Brett, would you like to go ahead and tell us what you thought of it?
Yeah, so this was a fairly interesting album to listen to. So I think the term you used earlier was like a concept album. Listen, I'll go straight into it. I really enjoyed listening to this album. And hopefully, again, as we go through the songs, it will help explain across from there. I'm also someone who has quite a bit of interest in history. I even studied history at GCSE level as well. And this was so interesting in the sense of that it almost felt like at times being in a history lesson, being in a museum, and also on a music side of things. Even though it was a rock album, I think a lot of times it didn't feel too rocky. I know at times it probably did, but also to me, it had more sort of a musical feel to it. And it's interesting, I've never saw an album where you've taken a particular subject and dedicated a whole album around it. So just for those things alone, it's something totally different, and something to be really interesting to look more into. I thought I knew, so obviously this is based on the First World War. There's bits I knew about the First World War, but even listening to this, I felt like I feel like I learned stuff from listening to an album, which I can't say I've ever done that too much before. So like I said, hopefully as we go, because I think it'd be more interesting to talk about some of the songs as well behind it. But yeah, really enjoyed listening to it. And I think even though it got quite rocky at times, I think the grand scheme of things, it didn't. And I think it really did help having the lyrics there as well. But what I did like as well, in fact, it was in English. And the big difference I found is that compared to, again, I don't know a lot of, metal and rock albums there, but generally it's always been the music that's the on the more the forefront side of things. But for this, I felt like the lyrics were clearer to hear or understand, or maybe I was being more conscious about that. And the music was almost the second element to it. So I think we've had a debate before, you know, when you have sort of cliche rap music, it's all about the lyrics over the music, whilst rock music has generally been more the music, and then the lyrics never really normally mean anything. They're just there to go along with the music. But I said this turned differently, and I felt the lyrics were just as important, if not more important than the actual music tune itself. So yeah, thumbs up from me at this early stage.
Okay, well, wouldn't it be great if I could be as positive about it, you know, as you were? But I can be.
Well, so,
I can.
well, okay.
Yeah,
because I'm really looking forward to hearing your opinion on it, because I know a lot of people know this is probably not your genre of music, and you get to understand that. But in this style, I don't know. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how you felt about it as well. So I won't interrupt anymore and let you take it away there, Lee.
Yeah, but like, okay, because the genre of this music, you've been calling it rock. This genre is heavy metal, and
sorry, yeah,
I think it was called fast metal as something like that on the Wikipedia. There was a kind of suit. That was a subgenre. Like, is it fast metal? I think it was something like that. So, as we said in the introduction, I was obviously very interested and intrigued as to what was going to happen. But I was very surprised in a very positive way, because in the previous two albums we've listened to, which have been also heavy metal, obviously a completely different subgenre, we had to put up with the growling. That's the official word, right? which we don't enjoy. Let's be honest, we don't enjoy it. And I just thought that was a staple part of heavy metal, right? Even in the comments section, that's what people have been saying. You know, you get growling in metal, but we didn't get it at all in this. This was a completely different sort of style. The singing, I had no issues with. I quite enjoyed it. We'll talk about his style of singing as well. Well, I might as well mention it now. He liked to roll his arse. Did you notice that? It sounded very Russian, actually. I think his band are quite popular in Russia, from what I read as well. Done some concerts there. So yeah, from the actual music side of things, I quite liked it. It was sort of like very fast, wasn't it? The way he was singing. There was a real sort of tune to it, or like most songs had a proper chorus. Well, all songs had a chorus to it. Like you say, the lyrics were very clear. Okay, it helps that I was actually following the lyrics on a separate page as well. I thought the narration was really important. I know this is the history edition, so on the standard one you won't get that. I think that really helped, kind of just set the scene. And as you say, you kind of learn, a little bit about the First World War as well. And some notes I've made here. Well, I've actually said all my notes. So yeah, it was a really good album, and it was quite similar for the most part, in terms of, I would describe it as, you sort of had the fast singing from the main guy, a kind of generally quite catchy chorus that was, repeated a few times throughout the song, and then a sort of instrumental part maybe in the second half of the song. But then it did change up with the last couple of songs, which we'll talk about. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised by this. Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, cool. I'll probably say, and probably the reason I ended up saying rock quite a lot there, because I probably forgot the fact it was meant to be a metal album, but because we didn't have the ground, I kind of forgot it felt more like a rock album. So apologies, but yeah, a metal album there.
Well, that was what I was going to say as well. It sounded to me, probably going to get a lot of criticism from comments for saying this, but it sounded to me more like rock than it did metal for quite a bit of it. It had a lot of sort of rock elements there. Now, as someone who doesn't really know too much about rock and metal anyway, maybe you do cross over, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, it was heavy metal. Okay, so if we go through the first song, The Future of Warfare, as I said, great narration. This was throughout. Happy with the lyrics because I didn't know what to expect. There was no growling. I wrote down, as I just said, it seems like rock music to me so far. Catchy chorus. And to be honest, I actually quite enjoyed it. Surprisingly good. So got off to a good start for me with this one.
Yeah, so I think the narration sort of introduction bits really good. Even though a lot of them didn't say a lot, it really did help to set the mood and just give an idea what it's all going to be sort of singing about, and just throughout that's going to be the same common theme from there. So yeah, really enjoyed that tiny little bit of element to it, and really sort of helped make the album for me. What else sort of got here? Yeah, like I said, so I was listening to it first without the lyrics, just to see. And I said, as we said, with all the other songs, where actually, even though I couldn't quite pick them out, the lyrics were clearer to listen to in the song itself. But obviously, the key thing was to definitely have the lyrics up as well to really get the most of it there. And yeah, it sort of sets the theme for the first song. So this is obviously in reference to the assassination of Franz Ferdinand, which obviously is the start of what happened for the First World War. And I said, I really enjoyed the fact that you could be sort of learning stuff and sort of taking things on whilst listening. So a reference I've put here is a song that I used to like by Genesis called Driving the Last Spike. And in short, it's effectively about the coal miners in Wales. And I think there was a disaster there. And just throughout the song, so like sort of similar, like 9 minutes long song, and just encapsulates the whole atmosphere feeling of what you actually listen to, and you feel like you can learn something from it. So yeah, and I said I'm saying this all now because generally it's the same sort of thing that I'll say about for a lot of the other songs as well. And we should make it clear, like stuff like with the First World War, something that we'll never ever sort of comprehend really. I think from a generation which never had to experience anything like this. So I like to think this is really given it a good insight for maybe people to really sort of understand it and sort of the horribleness that goes with it as well.
Yeah, I think as well, like it kind of does get you thinking, doesn't it? Kind of like, why do we have war? Like you literally got people killing each other. Like you're sort of listening to it, and I was like listening to some of the lyrics, especially in one song, which we'll come to a bit later. And it really just sort of question it. Like how does it ever cut? How does the world ever come to war? It's crazy.
Yeah, very much so.
7 Pillars of Wisdom was next. Narration is so useful. As you say, it's short, but it just kind of sets the scene, doesn't it? Like, because for me, I don't know much about the First World War. You know what I mean? It just helps you to understand what the song's about. Proper singing and has a proper tune to it. Instrumentals are quite easy to listen to, not too heavy at all. Just an overall, good song.
Yeah, very much so. And again, I mean, I know we should be really talking more about the music. That's what our thing is all about. But it's hard to when the background is so much more interesting. And let's be honest, the music and the songs generally don't change all that much. You said you get that nice narration at the start. You can sort of hear guns and stuff in the background. It just sort of sets the mood. Then it goes into your rock music, singing, and then some sort of instrumental rock, heavy metal towards the end. And then there are a couple which do vary slightly. We will talk about those, but otherwise that is the common theme throughout. So this song particularly, just very quickly. So this is to do with something they mentioned about T. Lawrence. So what then found out was obviously this is to do with Lawrence of Arabia. Now, Lawrence of Arabia, I've always heard mention. I know there's movies about it. He's always one of the most famous people you sort of heard of, but I actually had no idea the link it had with the First World War and what this was all about. And I said that just blew my mind a bit. When I see Lawrence and looks to see, Lawrence of Arabia, okay. All this time I've sort of heard of him, but never really sort of associate and put the two together. So again, really great sort of insight to that, and again, just a really listenable song, even though it did feel quite heavy at times. You still felt you could listen to it.
Yeah. Next one was 82nd All the Way. So just again, loving the storylines, setting the scene. The song is good. Tune is really good and catchy. Good variation to this song, I thought. We had some fast parts, some slow parts. It's enjoyable. And I put it here, it just feels more like hard rock to me rather than my kind of association of heavy metal, or at least what my association of heavy metal was before we were introduced to this sort of music.
Yeah, so I've almost put here, to me, it almost felt like in some way pop rock as well. I think that's really taken it if I'm really to him. But also, this is when I started associating a bit more like being like a musical. And I said, I do like musicals. And to me, I could imagine after this album, this could be like a musical in itself, really. I actually really like this particular song as well. I said, I wouldn't say it was catchy, but it was very listenable. It didn't feel too heavy. Like I said, I've almost felt it was almost like a bit of a pop rock side of things. Good tempo, and yeah, just really enjoyable to listen to, even though the message behind it, talking about, how all men are, becoming the same sin, all fighting for the same things, and having to go into no man's land. So, but despite all that, a really good song to listen to.
Yeah, next up we had The Attack of the Dead Men. So a catchy, fast chorus again, nice instrumentals again, sounded like an air guitar. And again, it just follows the same trend as the previous songs. There's not really too much to say, to be honest. I'm kind of just repeating myself because, as we both agree on, it was that the songs had a kind of same structure to them. So I think, as you say, kind of what was really interesting about it was more kind of the history behind it all. Well, it was history. That was the whole point of the album, right? It's telling about the history of it all. So the First World War. So I think when you can put all the elements together, the fact the music, the actual songs are quite good, and the fact there's a story being told, it makes for a good album, and all the songs are pretty decent.
Yeah, again, exactly the same sort of thing for his. So this song felt very similar to the one before, and this is then when I was sort of thinking, well, actually, I said, and it's kind of said the song before, it's quite hard because these are talking about quite harrowing. Like this one in particular was about gas poisoning and how enemies would gas each other, which is pretty extreme. But I'm sort of enjoying the music. I'm trying to listen to it as it goes through. But like I said, when you can go away and stop and think about it and do research and see exactly what sort of happened and stuff, makes it, like I said, a really good sort of album to listen to. So music-wise, very much the same. Still got that musical feel. But I say it's almost feel like maybe the message be clear about what it's putting through and not trying to be so enjoyable as much. But that's me being really critical in a strange way.
Okay, the next one then was Devil Dogs. So this was about the USA Marines entering the war. Put down here, I was learning about history, the same way as you are, enjoying the lyrics as well. And of course, we had the usual instrumental. I think in the second half of the song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I quite like this one as well. So it's obviously about the USA, obviously joining, and it's always been talked about. It's always jokes in movies and TVs how they came later to the war to sort of save the day, as they would probably say it. But this particular song did have that sort of what I would call like sort of Captain America that sort of Marvel sort of feel to it, where it almost felt like it's talking about the Batman now. The Americans have come in, and it's sort of it's really hard to explain. Just sort of that's why I think if the rock side of things, like American rock, come in to save the day, superhero style, and you did get that feel from this particular song. So this song for me actually reflected what the story was trying to tell with this one, because it has a sort of a good feeling to it because they're coming here to help out and stuff. But yeah, so a really enjoyable one as a whole to listen to.
Yeah, then we had the Red Baron. So again, similar in style to most of the other songs. Had the usual instrumental part. This one was easy to listen to, although it felt a little less dramatic than the previous songs. There was something about it. It didn't quite have that same kind of oomph, maybe, that the songs up to now had. It wasn't really a good thing or a bad thing? Just something that I noticed.
Yeah, and for that reason, I quite like that one because it didn't have too much of effect to it. Again, I've still gained that sort of musical feel from it a lot. And again, the Red Baron is something that I've always heard about. I knew he was a pilot in the war. I'll be honest, I actually thought the Red Baron was associated with the Second World War. So again, learning of that one there. So it was just interesting to see, and actually interesting enough, what I also didn't know, the Red Baron was actually part of the German alliance. So it wasn't actually British or from the other side. It was actually a German thing, a German pilot. He was 25 when he died, and he died sort of the end of the war. And the fact is, he was actually really respected by everyone in the war from both sides on being just this fantastic pilot who won so many battles during the war too. And again, it's strange when you talk about, how strange war can be and why get involved with war, who wins and everyone loses and stuff. But then even though this person's killing people from the other side, to still get the respect from the enemy on being such a good pilot, just shines a different kind of light on the story being told about the war and stuff.
Interesting. Then we had Great War. So this is about how war is a struggle. The lyrics are very much about that. So I was enjoying the story. I mean, just actually listening to the lyrics, and it was quite sort of, what's the word, kind of like quite emotional. I don't want to say emotional, but kind of, wow, this is quite deep stuff. There was the choir in this one was very evident. You could hear the choir, and I felt this was certainly a lot more dramatic than the previous song.
Yeah, definitely there. So I still felt it could have been, and I think emotional is the right word, where it could have been more emotional because it is talking about it's talking about the no man's land. I put it about the choir, and obviously they'd be more prominent as well a bit later on as well. But again, I actually really enjoyed listening to the song. But again, it's a bit like the other previous song, my criticism, but maybe the music could be different to reflect what it's actually talking about. But it's hard because it is meant to be a heavy metal album, so I can't criticize it on those sides. I'm just thinking, for me personally, for what it's talking about, the message it's talking about, it could be slightly different. But that aside, I actually really enjoyed listening to this one.
Next up, we had A Ghost in the Trenches. So we had the usual instrumental. But I just felt with this song, it was lacking a catchy chorus for me personally. Same kind of style as the previous songs, but wasn't quite as keen on this one for some reason. Couldn't quite put my finger on it.
Yeah, and I was always couldn't quite work out what the sort of the message this was meant to be about. Was it meant to be about soldiers that had died and sort of still there watching or helping have an influence of some sort, or the soldiers who are there feel like they're ghosts because I'm not really sure. But this is why I put about sort of a museum effect. So even with the narration, and like I said, it was like being in the museum, hearing about what sort of was going on and stuff. And again, like I said about the previous one, I think maybe the heavy metal could be turned down a little bit and have a different style to it to match what it's talking about. But like I said, that's me, as I said before, being really, really just unnecessary critical for it. But yeah, compared to other songs, didn't enjoy it as much, but it still fits in well, very nicely with the album.
Mm-hmm. So did you realise that you would need your history GCSE to help you do some album reviews when you're a bit older?
Yeah, you know what? I wouldn't have thought that at all, and especially when we come to the next one, that was pretty tough. Or maybe I thought I did know and actually didn't know, and had a bit. So actually, I probably would have been better off listening to this album back when I was doing my history GCSE potentially.
The next one was Fields of Verdun. So the usual kind of style, as we've already talked about. Had an instrumental, just the usual components, nothing really to. Obviously, by this stage, because we're coming towards the end of the album, maybe I'm slightly I'm used to the album by now, so it's not taking me by surprise as it was at the beginning. I'm not saying the album's getting worse. I'm just kind of you know, thinking, okay, the same kind of stuff. But then things change, which we'll talk about in a few moments.
Yeah, again, agree with sort of the points there. So even like the narration, I think it literally just says, "Here in Verdun, they shall not resist," and it's just that, and then straight into the song. Nothing that we haven't heard here already. So out of all the different bands, so this was eventually known as one of the bloodiest battles that was there. So this was mainly done through the French versus the German. 400,000 French casualties, 350,000 German casualties in total, 300,000 deaths. And there's loads of different other battles I had heard. I was trying to think of, like the Battle of the Somme, Battle of the Marne, but I never heard of this battle before, or maybe it had been mentioned, but it just passed me by. To gain a really good sort of interest. Was there, and it was also one of the not only was one of the most deadliest, one of the longest ones as well. And to think this went from, so I did a bit of research, went from February up until December in the year of 1916. It's like 9 months of just one battle that happened in the northern parts of France.
Sorry, I was going to just ask you there. So what you were just telling me there, telling us, was that from your GCSE, or was that research that you've just done? But yeah, now I understand. You've just done the research.
Yeah, I don't think that. But let's say it was a battle. Even if I had learned about it, I said one that I hadn't even remembered, and really it should be one, because I said it was one of the longest part of the wins. Yeah, and so many deaths. So again, I can imagine even might come up in a pub quiz every now and then. I can feel like now I probably will remember that because I listened to the album.
Okay. So then we came to the end of the war to end all wars. So this one had a very different start. It was slow. It didn't. Most of the other songs just kind of got straight into it. This one just really, because of that, it really caught my attention. I kind of wondered how it would develop. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, it just got really sort of loud and heavy. A real sort of contrast. But the singing was much slower, generally, than the other songs as well. The choir had quite a prominent role in this, I thought, whereas the main singer was, as I just said, kind of singing a bit slower, wasn't as loud, and just a very different style to the other songs, very dramatic as well. So I'm glad there was a change. You know, it came at the end of the album, but it just shows that they can do something else. This is obviously the same sort of thing going on, but it was just some changes to it. It just felt a bit different, and I like that. It was a nice song.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, and that's kind of what I was hoping from some of the other songs. But then thinking about it as we get to it, then also made this one that little bit more powerful because there hadn't been that change, too much of a change before. But yeah, it had that sort of really sort of slow, quiet, ease you into introduction. And then, yeah, it did come into the rock. Oh, it's a little bit of a shame. Again, not taking too much away from it, just because I like the change of it there. And as I said before, yeah, so the choir is, again, more prominent with it, which felt very fitting for this song. And I thought I'd just give it an interesting thing. So did do a couple of trips at GCSE level. So I actually did take a trip to Belgium to actually see some of the trenches that had been used during the First World War. And then we also went to the British War Museum. Is the British War Museum? The Imperial War Museum in London. And they had this big, massive clock, which was still counting up all the time. Because obviously the time of this is the war this was the war that was meant to end all wars. And actually, since this war ended, there hasn't been a day since, even to this day now, where there's always been a war that's been going on somewhere in the world since the war that was meant to end all wars. So again, really kind of again makes you think about the amount of deaths that's been just from this war and then all wars that's gone ahead. And as you're saying before, like, what was the point of war? Why does it happen? And who wins? And yeah, so like I say, it really was a good reflection for me, a real reflection track to sort of think back of everything that's been going on.
Yeah, the last song was In Flanders Fields. So it's a nice, the notes I put down here, a nice song from the women to get us going. But I thought, okay, now it's going to kick off. Then I looked at the length of the song and I realized it was very short. And we're already halfway through, and I realized this was the song. It was obviously completely different to all the other songs. And just I thought it was a great way to end the album, quite, I guess you could say, quite emotional after listening to the album, talking about killing people and the deaths and stuff. Just a kind of nice, very touching way to end the album with the women. A nice calm ending. And I guess I don't know much about, I'm not very good with history, especially the First World War, but they were talking about, I guess, the poppies from the fields in Flanders. Well, Flanders is that's I guess in Belgium, but I know that we wear, or I think we wear poppies in the UK because of the First World War from these, wherever it was, northern France or Belgium, because that's where the poppies grew, and it's to do with that. But I'm sure Brett, you'll tell me more about that in a second.
Yeah, I probably won't be able to tell you too much more. But you're right. But yeah, so now sort of where the poppies in association, so it's to now reflect all soldiers that have died in all wars, in warfare. So, but yeah, starts off in the Belgian fields there. So, just to go back to the song first. So yeah, really liked it. Now it's totally something different, and again, it was a real sort of emotional, nice touch where it's just no, it was just a choir singing. Is a female singing choir. So again, meant to give a feel, I think, obviously now all the men obviously passed away in the war, and it's the wives, girlfriends of the war heroes who are now singing on. So I had heard of this poem. So it's actually a poem in Flanders Field. I had heard of it. Again, didn't know anything really much to do with it, about it there. But then when I checked and had a look, so the lyrics they were singing were the actual lines from the poem. So it wasn't actually song themselves they wrote from there. So it was actually the actual poem that the choir were singing. And I found it just a really nice touch to sort of end the album. And I said, again, real sort of history lesson in itself. And then I was going to talk about more popular, already talked about there. And then just quickly on the guy who wrote the poem. So he was a soldier and surgeon in the First World War, and he actually died a little bit after the war due to meningitis and pneumonia. But yeah, he wrote that poem at some point. I don't know when exactly during the war, but I say it became a famous poem and linked them with the poppies and why we wear them now to this day.
Yeah, it sounded like a poem. When I was initially writing my notes, I wrote down so like a poem. Yeah, so that makes sense. Okay, so Brett, how would you sum up the album?
Yeah, like I said, as we started, it was obviously a concept album, and so I've never really listened to that style of album before. And if there were others like that, I would be really intrigued and really would like to listen to them, because I think it is a real interesting take on it, and really thoroughly enjoyed it. Even though it's probably not the genre of music I would listen to enjoy the most, but with it all, it became bearable just because of what it was doing there. So it gets a lot of credit from me on those side of things. And like I said, I enjoyed the musical elements that I found I got from it, and I would happily sort of listen to it. Happily listen to it again, and would even consider, if there was an album to actually have within my collection as well. I enjoyed it that much for like a whole different reasons, and be interested in different subjects and different genres of music taking on this take and doing the same sort of style. So yeah, big up there to what was the name of that? Santon. What was it called? Sabaton. Yeah. So all credit to them.
Okay, so for me, yeah, I also really enjoyed it. It was something different, very, very different in terms of the style of music that we weren't used to, and the theme as well. So that was really good. And I just think it really opened my eyes to this genre of music, which is a very big genre. It turns out, heavy metal, which I didn't used to know. I just kind of naively thought heavy metal was just head banging and mosh pits, and but it's obviously a lot more than that, as we've experienced from the three metal albums that we've listened to. The first two kind of had similarities between themselves, but I preferred the second one. which I think was Epica. Is that right? Or was that the first one? Second one was Epica, right?
The second one was Epica.
Yeah. And then this one, obviously, very different subgenre, but probably my favourite out of the three so far, even though there were lots of elements from the other two, particularly the second one that I did like, with the symphonic orchestra. So yeah, it's just completely changed my sort of whole view on this genre of music, and I'm glad that, you know, we've come to finally, at the age of 35 years old for me, to finally, you know, find it really and understand that actually there's so many different subgenres of heavy metal that there is something for everyone. As I think one of the people that wrote a comment said, you know, you can't just kind of assume heavy metal is just one way, one style. There's just so much more to it. So yeah, I'm really impressed by it, and I look forward to listening to some more heavy metal if anybody wants to request it. But that's out of our hands. That's for you, the viewer, to decide. And I think that's pretty much all. Well, the other thing I wanted to say was, this is just from memory, from when we looked at the Wikipedia article. I remember there were 4 versions of this song. There was the standard one, the history version, which is the one we listened to, which is just the narration at the beginning. There was one with Patreon special one, which had a narration from someone else, a different person, well-known person, I think. Can't remember the name. And then there was was it more like orchestral version of this album? That would be really interesting, I think, to listen to. Something like that. Do you remember?
Yeah, I can't remember. I just remember there was different versions, and we were listening to the history one, which I think that was a really key point on this one as well. So very minimal, but really helped see and enjoy the album.
Yeah. So thanks for the request. And yeah, we hope to see you again soon. Join us on Wednesday for a reaction video, and next Sunday for another album review. So thank you and goodbye.